Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the patience, and I would like to thank the organizers, and in particular the leader of our project, Professor Wieles, for the honor and the pleasure of being able to be with you today. So I would like to talk about certain dilemmas related to legal certainty, and many of the issues that I will talk about we already discussed today, so we just revisit them with some additional remarks and add some new ones. So first of all, the emergence of the principle of legal certainty was attributed to the German Reichsstaat, don't speak German obviously, related to French l'état de droit and the English rule of law, which all share the idea that political power should guarantee individual rights and be subjected to principles such as legal certainty, which is, well, it's a complicated notion. It can be defined in many ways, but a good way to put it, I think, is a possibility to foresee the effects of one's behavior. So that some person, some entity, in terms of migration, this will be persons, should be able to a maximum degree to predict what will be the legal treatment and consequences of their actions. From the judicial point of view, legal certainty includes the predictability whether a judicial decision will be issued, the predictability of its content of the judicial decision, and the predictability of its consequences. So legal certainty cannot be ever complete, but it should be strived to realize it to a maximum possible degree, and it seems to be very important from the point of view of irregular migrants or potential irregular migrants, as the possibility to foresee the consequences of one's actions seem to be one of the important determinants in terms of making decisions of whether to emigrate and in what mode to rather migrate than emigrate. In terms of chosen dilemmas, the three that seem to be worth mentioning or worth taking into consideration, among other one, of course, is the issue of coercive engineered migration, the issue of externalization of EU's migration governance to third countries. So this we actually talked about when discussing the EU-Turkey agreement deal. So we will revisit that for the moment, and the issue of tensions between national law and the EU law, which we already also discussed, but I will try to take another look at this issue from a bit different point of view. So starting with coercive engineered migration, it can be defined as cross-border population movements which are purposefully created in order to induce political, military, or economic concessions. In other words, these are instances of migration where migrations are not spontaneous, they're being orchestrated, conducted by coercing states in order to achieve very specific goals and concessions from targeted states. If one thinks about historical examples of coercive engineered migrations, two issues come to mind. Firstly, is that the coercing state seems to have a reasonable expectation of being successful, so coercive engineered migrations are often successful, and at the same time, coercive engineered migration is not limited to one area of the world. So there are instances of such policies both in Europe, but also in North America and Asia. The problem with coercive engineered migration is when it is successful, it creates incentives for other states to pursue similar policies, and it's also connected to a very controversial issue, which is sometimes defined as migrants becoming weapons, which is of course a very controversial statement, a statement that may arguably dehumanize migrants, but which is nevertheless largely accurate. Coercive engineered migration may be aimed at achieving limited goals, such as forcing financial aid, forcing lifting of sanctions, but it can also be a part of a broader hostile policy, which may include a risk of military aggression, and thereby it may threat as a part of a larger policy, basic security of inhabitants of the targeted state. It can be argued that coercive engineered migration may amount to a use of force, and when it does, arguably to find a balance between the rights of the targeted state and the rights of migrants, it may be required to derogate the state from its collective obligations related to expulsion in the context of use ad bellum. So what are some dilemmas connected to that? First of all, the question is what degree of threat should make it valid to conduct such derogation, and what should be the scope of this derogation? Well, this should depend on the nature of the threat, which leads us to the other problem, which is that the situation in this context can change very rapidly, and this is very detrimental to legal certainty. So when deciding or thinking about how to interpret the law or how to decide about the letter of the law, the interpreting of the law is actually very often more important than deciding about the letter of the law. This issue should be taken into consideration. The second issue I would like to mention is the externalization of European Union's migration governance to third countries. So one of example was already discussed, the EU-Turkey deal, so I won't be able to do it any better. But also I will mention the EU-Libya agreement. And this is aimed at reducing the number of people irregularly entering the EU. And past practices of the EU in this context were criticized from the point of view of poor protection of human rights. There were even accusations in terms of Libya agreement of complicity in slave trade. So what are some dilemmas connected to that? I would argue that it is also detrimental to legal certainty, as it impairs the ability of migrants or potential migrants to assess the results of their actions, and it may amount to a situation when, on the one hand, we have a very developed protection of human rights, and it is pursued, and at the same time, a very different policy is de facto conducted by proxy. So there is a strong incoherence there, apparently. And from the point of view of legal certainty, it definitely adds to the problem. Finally, I would like to touch upon the issue of tensions between national law and the EU law. So it's a theoretical problem, but these tensions can become very real, and they exist to varying degrees in different countries. Poland is an example of quite strong tensions in this regard, I suppose, to my best knowledge, also Hungary. Well, in Poland, to contextualize it as an example, the legal status of, I would say, significant amount of judges is being disputed from the point of view of validity of their appointment, and as their status is being disputed, the validity of judicial decisions rendered by these judges is also disputed, and this is a very important problem from the point of view of legal certainty. So these are of course not all of the problems which make legal certainty a challenge in terms of irregular migration, but these are good examples to my mind of how many issues should be taken into consideration, especially when interpreting the law and forming some policy propositions and propositions for the form and shape of the law. And actually, I was very inspired by a lot of what was said today. Personally, I don't believe that increasing fertility is able to solve the problem for several reasons. I think that it is important, and we should aim at increasing fertility to give ourselves more time to make migration maybe slower, to organize it in a way as to make sure that the migrants have the time to integrate into society. So it shouldn't be too fast, because if it is too fast, it may become even dangerous for the legal and social order. And well, automation also may help and to give us some, let's say, leeway in this respect. But all three will be probably most likely needed. And in terms of increasing fertility, so it's a huge challenge. Like in Poland, we were not successful in this regard. So we are successful at increasing living standards to a degree where emigration was largely limited, and immigration to Poland became attractive enough for like quite huge amount of people to come and at least for now stay. There are some legal instruments that could actually increase fertility, but I'm concerned whether society would be able to accept them. For example, if you would introduce a very steep increase in tax rates of income taxation, depending on how many children a person has in his or her care, and if this increase would be like really steep, that would be a huge incentive. The question is, will the people accept it? Is it feasible? Because from the point of view of the values of society, I think that seeing a family as a value, children as a value, it actually deteriorates rather than improve. So these actions would be like against the trend, but they are needed, I think. To come back and to conclude, to be as brief as possible, to legal certainty. So I don't think we can do away with migration. It will be. I think it will be necessary as one of the, let's say, building blocks of addressing the issue of aging of the Europe's population, or Europe's depopulation. But it should be regulated. It should be taking place according to a coherent plan and with a sufficient level of legal certainty, so that the people who do decide to migrate or are forced to migrate for whatever reason, they can reasonably predict what will happen to them. So again, thank you very much for your patience and for your attention.